Alright there guys, and may the 4th be with you. That is indeed the date today, and I've decided, with it being 4.5 years pretty much since the end of the mainline Star Wars saga, I thought this would be a good time for me to rank all 9 of the mainline Star Wars movies, so from episodes 1 to 9, so no Rogue One and no Solo. Because A, haven't seen them, and B, they're not part of the mainline saga anyway. But without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So coming in at number 9 as the worst Star Wars movie from the main 9 movies is Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Yes, this is a video, I actually did this video back in early 2018. Shortly after The Last Jedi released, but I wanted to make it again and have The Rise of Skywalker be included as well. But yeah, The Last Jedi comes in at number 8 because, I mean, it is a dreadful movie. It's so bad. Like, it's bad for the sequel trilogy standards, and that's not very high. God, this movie treats Luke Skywalker so badly. This movie makes everything Luke did in the original trilogy look like it means nothing. As he doesn't care about the Jedi anymore. He's thrown away the Jedi legacy that he has. And Mark Hamill himself, who supports all the stupid political ideas at Disney Star Wars, even he didn't like what Star Wars did to Luke Skywalker's character in the Last Jedi. His death scene was also pretty pathetic. I actually made a video on the channel back in 2022 explaining how I would have done Luke's death in The Last Jedi. I'll put that in the description for anyone who's interested. But yeah, the leader of the Resistance in this movie is terrible. That purple-haired bitch. She is god-awful of a character. If Princess Leia was the one giving all of the orders the whole time, no one would have complained because we know Princess Leia. We've been with her for many years. We know her very well as a character. This purple-haired bitch, I can't even remember if she was in The Force Awakens. I don't think she was. I think she was randomly introduced into this movie. But I will give this movie, it's the one scene it actually gets credit for, and that's the death of Snoke, who is an awful character. Snoke was a terrible replacement for the Emperor, and the movie clearly got that, so it killed him off. And the following fight between Rey and Kylo Ren against the Imperial Guards, that was pretty badass. But other than that, the rest of the movie is pretty god-awful, and that's why it comes in at number 9. Coming in at number 8 is Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which it's the 25-year anniversary of that movie this year. The Phantom Menace, well, first of all, it kills off Liam Neeson. I mean, how can you do that? It's Liam Neeson. Now, can you guys tell me in the comments if I'm wrong on this? Is The Phantom Menace the only movie ever where Liam Neeson plays a hero character that gets killed? Because I can't think of any other hero character he plays that he gets killed in a movie with. But yeah, the lightsaber fights massively save this movie because it's not very good, but the few really damn good things about this movie are the pod racing with Anakin, that's very good, and the lightsaber fight right at the end of the movie with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul. Darth Maul as a villain is interesting because he doesn't say much, but he does have the most badass looking lightsaber in the whole franchise, the double-ended lightsaber. I like Kylo Ren's lightsaber, I like the effects it has around it, but you can't go wrong with the double-ended lightsaber. And the Duel of the Fates music that plays during that fight, oh my god. Such an amazing soundtrack. But yeah, Jar Jar Binks is Jar Jar Binks. We don't need to say any more about him. But yeah, the Phantom Menace, it's just not very good, but it does have those brilliant things propping it up. And that's why it comes in at number 8. Coming at number 7 is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. This movie has... I like this movie. I know it's very low on the list, but I kind of like this movie. It's just got quite a number of things that I quite like about it. I mean, the introduction of Jango Fett and Boba Fett, so it ties in why Boba Fett is part of the is fighting alongside the Empire in the original trilogy. We get to see how that came about. We're first introduced to the clone troopers, which of course became the stormtroopers in the original trilogy. So we also get to learn how they were created. But of course, the two best things about this movie are the battle on Geonosis, where there's a ton of Jedi that appear out of nowhere. Then Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme take down those beastly things. And then Master Windu takes down Jango Fett. And then the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Count Dooku at the end, whew, so good. Especially when the lights go out and and the lightsabers are the only thing lighting up the room. That was an incredible idea to put in there, to kill the lights and have the lightsabers be the only source of light. And if that wasn't enough, they even gave us Yoda have a little bit of a battle with Count Dooku, which was also great. Because if you think about it, Yoda doesn't do anything in the original trilogy. He simply just teaches Luke how to use the Force, and that's literally it. In the prequel trilogy, he's so much more of a badass than he ever was in the original trilogy. And if you think about it, the prequel trilogy is where Yoda is the best. And obviously the sequel trilogy is the worst because he's barely even in it. And that's why Attack of the Clones comes in at number 7. Coming in at the number 6 spot is Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, the final episode of this Star Wars saga. After the absolute car crash of Episode 8, J.J. Abrams, who also directed Episode 7, had to figure out how to try and correct the absolute car crash that has been put in front of him. And he started off with the death of Snoke, bringing back the Emperor. So just like at the end of the original trilogy and the end of the prequel trilogy, the same thing happens at the end of the sequel trilogy, where the main overall villain is the Emperor. Now, the Emperor is one of the best characters in all of Star Wars. He just is. But, even though that's true, his return is not spectacular. The fact that he has to stay in the same place throughout the entire movie, because the Emperor apparently had a cloning device, which we never knew about until this movie. Poe even says in Episode 9, somehow Palpatine has returned. Even they don't know how this happened. And Kylo Ren, the Emperor, talks to Kylo Ren, quite similar to the way he talked to Anakin in Episode 3. Although I do like the way they introduce the Emperor in this movie, because he says one of his iconic lines from Episode 3, where he says, "The path to the dark side of the Force is a path to many abilities that some would say are unnatural." And then there's like a flash of lightning that shows his face. I did like that, but again, this movie was more of it didn't have anything that great in it, but it also didn't really have anything that terrible. Although the way Rey jumps over that TIE fighter makes absolutely no sense. No other Jedi has ever done that before. But Rey, of course, can do it because she has no flaws and can't be stopped, apparently. Which was a big problem with Rey as a character as a whole. She didn't have to learn the Force at all. She didn't have to train or do anything. She could just do it. But yeah, the way even the way they defeat the Emperor right at the end of the movie isn't that impressive because it's literally what Mace Windu was doing in Episode 3 until Anakin stopped him. Where Rey uses her lightsaber to deflect the Force lightning back at the Emperor to kill him once and for all. And that's why Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, comes in at number 6. Coming in at the number 5 spot is Episode 7, The Force Awakens. By far the best movie in the sequel trilogy. It has not because it's amazing, but because it has the least bad things in it. It introduces to Kylo Ren, who will never be as good as Darth Vader. Like, Kylo Ren isn't a bad villain, but there's so many great villains in Star Wars that that makes him one of the worst. Some of the things I like about this movie, I like BB-8. I think he was a very good addition to the sequel trilogy, a brand new version of R2-D2. But they also, of course, kept R2-D2 as well. They also gave us a new version of him, a more updated version of him, you could say. But Episode 7 really tries to act like another Episode 4, the same way Episode 9 tries to act like another Episode 6. It tries to follow the same formula that A New Hope did, and it simply does it worse. As does Episode 9 to Episode 6, it just does it worse. Again, the sequel trilogy has 0 good lightsaber battles. 0. Not a single lightsaber battle in the sequel trilogy is good. And lightsaber battles are one of the biggest things in Star Wars. So if you're not going to get that right, you're not exactly going to helping yourself, are you? But Finn as a character was actually a fairly good character. We thought he was going to become a Jedi. He never does, which was a shame. I think the sequel trilogy would have actually been liked more if they allowed Finn to become a Jedi. Because he'd also be the first Stormtrooper in history to go from Stormtrooper to Jedi. And that's why The Force Awakens comes in at number 5. Coming in at the number 4 spot is Episode 4, A New Hope. As a kid, I really did not like this movie. Although that also probably has something to do with the fact that I did not enjoy... I'm not particularly a big fan of A New Hope in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga either. It's probably my least favourite movie out of the first 6 to play in that game. But as I've gotten older, I've realised why it's actually as good as it is. I mean, Luke, Leia, Han Solo, all of them, great characters. The lightsaber battles are something that are very much to be desired. There's only one lightsaber battle in that entire movie, and it's not very good. It's Ben Kenobi versus Darth Vader, but the impact the fight has on the rest of the original trilogy is actually pretty big, which is what makes it a good lightsaber battle. Not because the battle itself is any good, but Obi-Wan sacrifices himself in order to pass the Force on to Luke, which is exactly what Luke should have done in Episode 8 to pass the Force properly on to Rey. It would have been a good way to continue the transition of the Force. It also gave us our first introduction to Darth Vader, who is probably most people's favourite Star Wars villain, and probably a lot of people's favourite Star Wars character in general. But yeah, Luke doesn't use a lightsaber pretty much at all in this movie, apart from a little bit of training with it on the Millennium Falcon. We also get introduced to Jabba the Hutt for the first time in this movie. And we also get the infamous who shot first, Han or Greedo? Well, it doesn't matter, because Han's shot hit and Greedo's shot didn't. That's all that really matters. And that's why A New Hope comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 spot is Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. The only movie until the sequel trilogy, where Luke Skywalker is actually a fully fledged Jedi. And this movie has so many great things. Its opening, where Luke taking down the Rancor, the battle in the sky, where we get to see Luke use his green lightsaber properly for the very first time, the death of Boba Fett, Leia killing Jabba the Hutt in a pretty revealing outfit that I'm pretty sure a lot of people were very keen to keep looking at, if you know what I mean. The Battle of Endor, the space battle right at the end, with Lando in the Millennium Falcon, and of course, Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader for the final time. Now, the way Luke enters Jabba's palace is a very good way to foreshadow is actually sort of foreshadowing what the end of the movie, because when Luke arrives at Jabba's palace, the two guards that are standing in his way, he just force chokes both of them. Only the Sith can use force choke. So it was like the movie was giving a little bit of a teaser to what Darth Vader was going to try to do to Luke. He was simply trying to convince Luke to join the dark side, the same way the Emperor did to Anakin in Episode 3. Then, of course, there's the iconic battle between Luke and Darth Vader at the end of the movie, where the Emperor tries to get Luke to slay Darth Vader, but he doesn't. And then, of course, the Emperor starts using Force Lightning and then gets thrown down that hole by Darth Vader. Which I like to believe that the cloning device in Episode 9 was at the bottom of that hole where the Emperor got thrown, which is how he's able to still be there. It's the only explanation I can think of that makes some sort of sense to how the Emperor even managed to have a cloning device in the first place. And then, of course, Darth Vader's death is a very sad one, because, unlike in Episode 3, with Darth Vader trying to convince Luke to come to the dark side, Luke is actually trying to convince Darth Vader to come back to the light side at the very same time. They're both trying to convince each other to join the other side of the Force. And that's why Return of the Jedi comes in at number 3. Coming in at the number 2 spot is The Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5. Oh boy, this movie, it had the Battle of Hoth. It had Luke and Leia, if you know what I mean. We had the first initiation of the Han and Leia romance, which of course then continued on into Episode 6. Luke versus Darth Vader for the very first time. And I'd actually say that Luke versus Vader in Episode 5 is better than the one from Return of the Jedi. But the emotional... They both have very big emotional impacts at the end. But yeah, I'd say Luke versus Vader, because Luke is so much weaker than Vader, so he rarely has the upper hand at any point. But of course, then one of if arguably the most iconic line in all of Star Wars, "No, I am your father." Probably the most iconic line in Star Wars history. the reveal that Darth Vader is the father of Luke Skywalker. Which, of course, if you watch the movies in chronological order, from episode 1 to 9, you already knew that. But, of course, when episode 6 came out, the prequel trilogy didn't exist, so it was, episode 5 even came out, the prequel trilogy did not exist, so no one knew, no one had any way of knowing that, until that very moment. And that's why episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, comes in at the number 2 spot, meaning, coming in at the number 1 spot, it's the thumbnail of the video. You should have if you know me, you already knew this. It's episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Oh, I love this movie, it's so good. Number 1, it has the most lightsaber battles of any Star Wars movie, which a total of 5. Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Count Dooku, Obi-Wan versus General Grievous, Mace Windu versus the Emperor, Yoda versus the Emperor, and Obi-Wan versus Anakin. So it already has the most lightsaber fights, which is a big thing for me. It also has the greatest lightsaber battle in the whole franchise, Obi-Wan versus Anakin, right at the end. Because not only is it an extremely emotional battle because of what Obi-Wan and Anakin have been through together and how they're now having to face each other, but also the battle itself is incredible. I actually made a video back in 2021 on this very exact topic of why Episode 3 is the best Star Wars movie out of them all. Despite it being a prequel trilogy movie, it's still better than the entire original trilogy. And I will always stick by that. It's also the most memeable Star Wars episode, such as, "Kill him now, do it. Master Windu, I am the Senate. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must." All of that good stuff. But yeah, in that video I mostly talk about how the Emperor does a spectacular job of emotional manipulation into convincing Anakin to join the dark side of the Force. And the fact that the Emperor was the Sith Lord that the Jedi had been looking for the entire time. But yeah, all of the battles in Episode 3 are either good, great, or, as Obi-Wan versus Anakin, amazing. And it does the most perfect job of setting up the original trilogy, showing us off Darth Vader for the very first time, if you watch it in chronological order, right at the end of Episode 3. And it just is a fantastic movie, and that is going to conclude my ranking of the mainline Star Wars movies from worst to best. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, tell me in the comments your ranking for the mainline Star Wars movies, and until we meet again, farewell.